Welcome to the Educator Wellness Series. This is our sixth episode of this. We do this once a month, as we're going to talk about. But today we are going to talk about setting healthy boundaries at school. And that's at a bunch of different levels and a bunch of different people. So we're really excited for this conversation. If you are new to our little program, my name is Nick Esposito. I'm a senior design principal here at Education Elements, and I get to work with school districts all over the country. And one of the things that I really take seriously is the mental wellness of educators. If you are new to Education Elements, we believe, as you can see there at the top, that schools grow when people grow. And the reason I include this slide every single time is because of those bullet points at the bottom, right? Personalized learning, employee retention, equity work, strat planning, curriculum, all of that. The reason that I wanted to show that is because each one of those things which school districts come to us to, kind of think through with them, all of them have their tentacles in teacher wellness, right? If we can help with the wellness of teachers, we can really do good things within each one of those topics. All right. So let's just do the wellness series at a glance here. So what we've been doing is each month we gather together and we want to analyze educator wellness from a different vantage point. So our guest Caitlin today is going to take us on a whole new vantage point that our other guest speakers haven't. And it's been a really great conversation thus far. She has worn a bunch of different hats throughout her career, whether it be a teacher, working in schools, working with teachers, being a mom, being just a family person, right? All of that, right, you need to have healthy boundaries. And over the course of time, I'm guessing part of her story is going to be that, it ebbs and flows with success in that area. So I really want, you'd all welcome her and hear her story. If you want to learn more about her work, we're going to get to all of the cool things she's doing a little bit later today, but head over to her website, howtogetaway.with teaching.com. A lot of really cool things. And I was trying to do that introduction, Caitlin, without giving away too much about your story. So welcome. And thank you so much for being our sixth guest of the year.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. I am so happy to be here. And wow, I just feel very proud of myself, Nick. You just really know how to talk a girl up. So I appreciate that. We can go ahead and jump right in. Today, we are talking about boundaries, and I love a good acronym. I am a former elementary school teacher, so we're going to talk about ways that we can empower educators to get bold in their boundaries. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so basically what our agenda is going to look like, I'm going to introduce myself, talk a little bit about my experience, and we're going to talk about the who, the what, the why, the how, and then we'll go over questions. I'm very simple, straight to the point, but I really like to focus on specific questions. How are we going to get the results that we want, and how are we going to get there? So let's go ahead and get to the next slide. Thank you, Nick. All right, and see, Miss Smith, you're so strong. We need you to take these kids. We have to put them in Smith's class because he doesn't respect white teachers. Miss Smith, you're so strong. I know you can handle it. Are you sure you're that sick? You can't make it? The kids really need you. These are just a few quotes from my teaching experience from 2012 to 2022. The girl on the left that you see was eager and willing and ready to save the world, right? She set out to change the lives of children through education because she knew that was one way that they would have an advantage in the world. As a result, her test scores, they thrived. Her students were happy. She volunteered to do everything. She served as the grade level chair, district liaison, personal mentor, personalized learning implementation lead, professional development facilitator throughout her career, all still while holding down in the classroom. Here's the problem. While she was so busy being a strong, dependable team player, her mental and her physical health were crumbling as she met burnout and struggled to find the harmony between her personal and professional life. 10 years later, you see the woman on the left. She closed her chapter in education with lessons learned that she continues to share with teachers all over the world. Hi, My name is Caitlin Paysmith, and I'm here to talk to you about a framework that can help empower your strong educators, the ones you always depend on, how to support them with healthy boundaries in their personal and professional lives. The framework is called B.O.L.D, which stands for boundaries, ownership, limits, and decisions. I'm a former classroom teacher. I taught in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools for 10 years, grades 2 through 5. In my experience, I've met burnout, I met depression after having my daughter, I met postpartum depression, and I began to start having conversations about my experience with mental health as it related to teaching. You see, I really struggled to find the balance that people talked about, but I failed to realize that the balance doesn't exist. It's more so in harmony. So with that, I started blogging and started sharing my experience with other teachers and found, oh my goodness, girl, you're not the only one. And while that's heartwarming, like to find out you're not alone in this, it's also pretty disappointing because you realize, wow, this is how teachers all over are feeling. So if we're expecting these people to constantly pour, and give, who's giving to them? Who's pouring into them? Who's refilling their cup? So I became a teacher, mental health and wellness advocate, and started a company called How to Get Away with Teaching, where I work with mental health therapists to support educators with mental health strategies and self-care tips so that they can live their best lives. This wellness chat is centered on your strong educators, the ones who are often praised for being that team player. They are so dependable, they're dedicated, they're often the ones who might have that student on their roster because, you can handle it. The educators who volunteer often and rarely say no, being tasked with extra responsibilities. Many of them are sacrificing their own physical and mental health and time with their own families due to the culture of their environment. They might not feel comfortable setting boundaries or saying no. So, what do? Well, speaking of it from experience, they put themselves on the back burner only to rarely check back in on themselves because they put the needs of others before their own for so long. So it is my hope to inspire and encourage you today to have some real honest conversations with your staff or your school or your fellow teachers or district leaders, to have conversations about what boundaries can look like and how they can be supported in your setting. All right. So we talked about the who. We're talking about our strong teachers, the ones who, you might not notice if they're struggling. You might not, be concerned or be thinking about them because they constantly seem like they always got it together, right? But the data shows us a whole lot. This slide is from the 2022 State of the American Teachers Survey conducted by the RAND Corporation. We've probably heard and are well aware of these numbers, but the key findings indicate a deeper message and should encourage us to have some really good conversation about our district and our school cultures. In the quote, you can see teachers and principals reported worse well-being than other working adults. Well-being was especially poor among Hispanic, Latinx teachers, mid-career teachers, and female teachers and principals. What are we noticing? The frequent job-related stress, 75% of teachers compared to 40% of other working adults. 27% reported symptoms of depression compared to 10% of other working adults. So when we think about cultivating environments that support educator wellness, we have to keep these numbers like these at the forefront of our decisions and our conversations with teachers. Let's head to the next slide. So here's the why. Today, I want to encourage you to get bold. BOLD is an acronym that stands for boundaries, ownership, limits, and decisions. Why do educators need boundaries? Well, because for decades, we've normalized unhealthy behaviors and harmful practices as it relates to teacher well-being in the education profession. And that's just the hard truth. We've equated good teaching with going above and beyond, giving it all you got and doing what's best for kids, even if it comes to the expense of your own well-being. If we're thinking about pouring into educator wellness, we have to see the teacher as an entire human, a being, a person, and think about creative ways that we can pour into that person so that they can show up whole and well every day. Now, Why boundaries? I mean, they're essential for all individuals, but they help us understand where we stand, what we want, and what we don't want. Setting boundaries allows us to protect our mental and emotional and physical well being, helping us avoid burnout and create healthy relationships with our colleagues and students. But they're specifically necessary for your strong teachers because they've been doing the same thing the same way for such a long time. And that's very challenging to unlearn. So you can be supportive in your positions to help them unlearn and feel like they can give themselves permission to actually set a boundary and uphold it. The O in BOLD stands for ownership, refers to taking responsibility for our own actions. And as educators, we must take ownership of our teaching practices and the impact they have on our students. Hand in hand with that, we have the responsibility for our own self-care so that we can show up and do whatever it is that we need to do and realize that I cannot do my job if I am not well. If I am not taking care of myself, I cannot show up the way that I need to show up. And that was very challenging for me to learn. Limits, those are the boundaries that we set for ourselves in terms of what are we willing to accept and what are we not going to accept when it comes to our professional and personal lives. I think Gen Z is showing us exactly what that looks like. They are giving us very good examples of what it looks like to know yourself and know your limits. Knowing those limits is crucial because it allows us to avoid situations that are not in alignment with our values or beliefs. So setting those can also help us avoid stress and burnout. Finally, our decisions. Whew, that's the hard part. You got to make the decision. Decisions are the choices we make in our personal and professional lives. And as educators, we make decisions every single day that impact children, that impact students, that impact our community, right? And that is not an easy lift. That is quite a task, a noble one indeed. But by understanding our boundaries, taking ownership of our actions, setting limits, we can make informed decisions that align with our values and goals. So, how can we use that BOLD framework to create a school culture that helps educators develop the skills and strategies that they need to thrive? First, we need to recognize that boundaries are essential for everyone. Like tossing them out like Oprah was giving people cars. You get a boundary, you get a boundary, everybody gets boundaries. That should be great, right? But it's easier said than done. Teachers need to know that their environment is a safe space to create boundaries. I'm going to say that again. Teachers need to know that their environment, their working environment, is a safe space to create and enforce boundaries. This might look like normalizing discussions with administration, specifically about how can I prioritize my tasks so that I am not taking my work home in my teacher bag every single night and every single weekend. How can I structure my class so that I am able to get a little bit of work done during independent work time? Or what are the expectations during independent work time? Teachers need to know that they won't be blackballed or targeted because they say no to an after school opportunity in order to make their child's soccer game. They need to feel safe and supported by their administration. They need to be seen as humans and have a clear separation between their professional life and their personal life. To do this, you can enlist mentors or have the administrative teams share their boundaries to model that harmonious balance. My first principal and I, we went to the same alma mater, Winthrop University in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Now, during the week of homecoming, she asked what I was doing over the weekend. And I said, okay, mind you, I'm 23 years old, right? I said, I'm going to a party, here or there. And she said, well, what are you doing Sunday? And I said, nothing. I got to go to work. And her mouth dropped. She's like, Pay Pay. Before I got married, my last name is Smith now, but my last name used to be Pay. She said, Pay, no, ma'am. You need to go out and live your best life. And I thought, oh my gosh, really? Like that really just took so much weight off my shoulders. The fact that she was encouraging me to have a life outside of teaching. The fact that she said, we'll figure it out on Monday if you need, if you need to take the day. And I thought, oh, I was putting pressure on myself that literally nobody else was putting on me. But I thought a good teacher needed to be responsible. They couldn't take a day off because they were, traveling or enjoying being with their friends. But that statement encouraged me to remove the pressure that I was putting on myself to be that good teacher. So I think when administrators show that humanity and you all show that you're making decisions and setting boundaries and knowing that and enjoying your personal lives and sharing that with your teachers, that opens the door for opportunities for them to do the same thing. Okay, so that's all about boundaries. Now, how are we going to encourage educators to take ownership of their teaching practices and their own self-care? This can be done by providing resources or professional development to promote that harmonious work-life balance. And I use balance like very loosely because I know it's balance. I just think there's a harmony. At some points, work is going to require more. At some points, life is, or your personal life is going to require more. And working with the ebbs and flows, that's something that comes with experience, right? I think a way to do that during the pandemic, districts all over the country, mine included, oh my goodness, y'all, they implemented Wellness Wednesday. And it was amazing. We had a 4-day work week. Monday, Tuesday, we met with our students. Wednesday was Wellness Wednesday. We could catch up on getting work done. We could meet with our teams. We could meet with students for one-on-one groups. And then Thursday, Friday was teaching, instructional as, usual. But let me tell you, teachers' time is the greatest gift you can give. One of the greatest gifts you can give. Ample time to get work done. This might look like, when you're empowering people to take ownership, it might look like canceling a meeting that might not be necessary. It might look like something creative and, allowing teachers to have that extra time to get their work done. It might look like I've seen some videos where they were told they had a professional development and the principal was just like, oh no, just kidding, go do what you will with this time. And that is something, because you can't get that time back. That is something that's very important. And so I think to encourage teachers to take ownership of their self-care, you have to give them time to get their jobs done. Okay. And I want to encourage you to look at creative ways to provide teachers with that time, because nothing is more insulting than giving teachers a very long list of things to do. And at the end, it says, be sure to take care of yourself this weekend. And I say that with so much love in my heart. And I know we mean well when we make statements like this. But if there's anything in your control or in your power that you can do to remove unnecessary tasks from teachers' plates, do that. They will appreciate that much more than the message that says, please take care of yourself. Or it can be given at the same time. In order for you to take care of yourself this weekend, we will no longer require lesson plans being turned in by Friday at 3 p.m. Take some of the load off, see what it is that's not necessary, and try to find different ways to remove those unnecessary tasks. So next is the L, talking about limits. We want to recognize and respect the limits of our staff. This means listening to their needs and their desires and avoiding situations that might cause unnecessary stress or harm. A simple example might be, let's say you have a teacher who does amazing bulletin boards, fabulous, and they receive so many good compliments when the district comes through, and you make sure those bulletin boards are just sparkling and glittery and beautiful. Now, how can we respect the limits of this teacher who represents the school so well? First, we will not expect this teacher to do all of this extra work out of the kindness and goodness and passion of their hearts, because we know they're passionate, we know they're good, we know they're kind. However, we do also know if you're asking them to do this on their own time, that could be taking advantage of their personal time. right? So think about what can be the trade-off for these extra asks that you're providing for teachers. And if it's not in the budget, you can get creative. This teacher might come back with a boundary that says, I am so flattered you would ask me to do that, but I'm unable to complete this task outside of my contract hours. Can we arrange coverage during my second block or first thing in the morning to ensure that I'm able to complete this and protect my planning time? Or they might request to collaborate with a few other teachers to rotate the task on a monthly basis during morning arrival as students are trickling in. Either way, the goal here is to collaborate with teachers as problem solvers. Just like teachers know their students' attitudes and their behaviors, and they notice, oh, so and so is a little off, right? You can do the same thing. I would encourage administrators to pay attention to their teachers. This can be done by arranging a monthly check-in with your staff or some sort of communication to let your teachers know that you see them and you appreciate. Handwritten cards, ooh, always my favorite. I still have them in a notebook. There's nothing like walking in your mailbox and there's a sweet little note from your principal or from an administrator or from a colleague, especially if like you're the only one that got it. Ooh, girl, that's like equivalent to being the line leader when you're in kindergarten, like seriously. But also having an open door policy. That's a great way to build trust with your staff as well. I would recommend doing like a morning sweep in the hallway as a good morning, not like a gotcha, you're not standing outside your door, Miss Smith. What are you doing? A genuine good morning. How are you doing? Do you need anything? Did you see the last episode of Housewives? Something to show that you're human and we're all. Finally, decisions. We must empower educators to make informed decisions that align with their values and goals. This can be done by providing opportunities for collaboration and professional growth, and by recognizing and celebrating the achievements of our staff and students. One thing that worried me in the classroom was the fact that my to-do list was never, ever done. Every ask seemed to come with the same level of intensity, and it seemed like a really high priority, when in fact that wasn't the case. What I needed was specific training on how to prioritize those tasks, and also how to be okay if all of those things on the to-do list did not get done. So communication from admin with priority levels of requirements can be very beneficial and can alleviate some of your staff members' levels of anxiety. Because sometimes when we get emails and we're teaching and we're doing this, we're doing that, it can become very overwhelming to the point where you don't know how to prioritize these things because it's so overwhelming. So perhaps a workshop on, okay, these are the tasks, how would we prioritize them? And if a teacher says, I have no idea what I'm doing, please help me organize my tasks, be open to that. Maybe pair them with a mentor who's really good at prioritizing. Or if you have a teacher who they're doing too much, you can talk to them. Remember, those strong teachers, like, we love to do all of the things. Sometimes you might have to slow them down by helping them prioritize their list. Enlist the teachers in your school to create and deliver PD. Like I said, y'all have a bunch of geniuses at your school. You can create a professional development menu that's differentiated, allowing teachers to choose what they would like to learn more about. This will empower your educators so that some of them, I'm on the teaching part where I am teaching my staff or my teammates about cultural bias in the classroom. And then sometimes I'm on the receiving end where I'm learning all about Orton Gillingham training, right? You can pair put your educators in position so that they can make decisions and lead professional development. Lastly, when it comes to empowering educators, you can model this by collaborating with your grade level chairs, your team leads to make decisions for the school that are aligned with your school goals or your vision or mission, all of those buzzwords.
Well, Caitlin, thank you so much. I have a lot of questions myself. So
Okay.
I promise everyone that I will not take up all of the airtime. So take a moment feel free to write your question in the chat or come off of mute, but I'll get us started with one question. You would just kind of ended with something that I was very curious about is, how do you help others set boundaries, right? Like I feel, as a teacher myself, some of the biggest, perpetrators of this is like ourselves, right? Like that
Yes.
we don't do this. Like we put a lot of the pressure. So how do you identify, this colleague of mine really needs healthier boundaries? Like, so A, how do I recognize that? And then B, what would you suggest be like that first step for me to reach out to them, no matter what position I am in the school?
I love that question so much. Depending on your position and your relationship with that teacher, I would start from there and consider how they might receive what it is that you're saying. Some people might be offended. Some might be just taken aback, like, oh, I can't believe you would challenge me like that, But you have some people that just might be on edge and they might think, oh my God, like they might break down in tears because they know that they need it. And your simple act of reaching out is like that first step. What I would say is communicate with whoever you know that is close to that teacher. Like if you're an administrator, who's close to that person, or if you are that person, get an accountability partner. And what that means is you have someone who you have shared and you have been very transparent with about what it is that you want and where you currently are, and share with them, this is what I'm going to try to commit to. Step one, if my problem is I can't leave work on time, that's my problem. This girl's here at 6 a.m. She doesn't leave till the custodian leaves at 6:30 p.m. That's a problem, right? So you might want to share with your accountability partner, I'm going to try to leave work at 4 o'clock. Can you partner with me to make sure that I am walking out of the door with my bags when it's time to go to the buses? And expect that person to keep you in check and maybe have like a weekly check-in. Hey, how'd you do this week? Oh girl, I saw you leaving at 4 o'clock, or rooting for each other, like literally. If in fact you find, okay, 4 o'clock, that was a little too early. Let's try 5 o'clock, let's try smaller steps if that is uncomfortable. But I encourage everyone, when it comes to setting a boundary, start small and find a way to interrupt that routine that you've been doing for so long.
Absolutely. Thank you so
Of
much.
course.
Latia got a question in the chat. I love all this information. What suggestions do you have when administrators or the district doesn't take teacher wellness into consideration at all? What would be the first step you would take in that situation?
I think Latia and lots of educators, I love that question. This was hard for me. And what I had to realize is I could no longer wait for an administrator or a district lead to give me permission to take care of myself. I could not wait for someone to tell me, because you have to realize what is happening to you or whatever it is you're going through is having immense impact on your body. Could be medical, could be physical, emotional, mental, all of those pieces. But if it gets to the point where you feel like you're not being heard, this is when you give feedback on those surveys that they send out. And I know everyone's like, oh, they don't read them at all. At least you put it out there, right? So once you put the ball in their court and you don't see anything change, you have to take matters into your own hands and do not wait for an administrator to give you permission to take care of yourself. You got to take matters into your own hands. And that could look like changing schools or changing districts, or just completely shifting your mindset to reassess, where am I currently and where is it that I envision my best cared for self? What does she look like? Like, I'm trying to get over there. How do I do that? And there's a series of steps depending on what you want your educational trajectory to look like. But I think the first step is voicing your opinion multiple times. If that does not work, take it into your own hands. Do not wait for someone to give you permission, because sadly, I know there's a huge push for wellness in education, but sometimes folks aren't listening.
The next question I have goes to, is there a time, and this might be a weird question to ask in this environment, but when boundary setting goes too far, right? Where like there is an opportunity where like I still think, yeah, but we need to hit standards. Yeah, but we've got to hit success metrics. We've got things that, I would love to give this to you, but I can't. So I guess I'm trying to boil this question down to, there is a cost to boundary setting, but there's also a return on investment. So could you
Absolutely.
kind of talk to that, so that we can all navigate this together?
Yeah, I think that's a loaded question. I love it so much. I think the cost is what you see right in front of you, right? It could be seen as a temporary cost for a long-term return on investment. If I know that my educators are setting boundaries and abiding by those, I might not have the amount of participation that I want at this after school night or curriculum night. But I do know I'm going to have my teachers that are going to come back every school year. But also I'm wondering, when it comes to that question, is that where we can also see that level of ownership and recognizing, yes, we are adults. Yes, we are professionals. However, we do have a job to do at the end of the day as well. So keep that in mind when you're setting your boundaries. So I think in leading these conversations with educators, that districts and principals and leaders can have these conversations that really mentions that, like when it comes to you setting your boundaries, you also need to think about, is this a boundary for you to make sure you're able to continue teaching, or is this showing you that you don't need to be a teacher?
Right. Right. No,
You know,
yeah.
is it a productive boundary that's going to help you show up like well and whole, or is it something that you're doing to just kind of mosey along and just keep on trying so that you can still show up every day to get a paycheck, right? And if that's what we're finding, then that person might need to find a different career path or go through some coaching or some additional training so that they can figure out what it is that they really want to do. Perhaps not in the classroom directly. Perhaps you want to work with children in a different capacity. But I will say that is a conversation that administrators need to have. Yeah, I'm cool with you setting your boundaries. However, XYZ, this is our school mission and vision. We want humans who are well taken care of, but also we need our teachers to show up and do what we need to do for the kids as well.
I love that. And that leads me to my second question. You touched on it a little bit, but can you talk to me through the Gen Z of it all, right? We've got a whole new generation. I know when you had mentioned that, I saw a few faces, everybody kind of smiled. We've got, how do we navigate that? They are really good at setting boundaries, but it might conflict with the ways we've always done things.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that the new way is good and the old way is bad, or vice versa. So how do we navigate this new generation and any other generation to follow?
Yeah, because honestly, what we're seeing is just a prime example. And I'm a millennial, so I hear a lot of millennials and Gen X, they'll say to Gen Z, like, gosh, y'all are doing what I wish we could have done, what we didn't have the ability to do. But also Gen Z, they might need some mentoring, some coaching, some molding, if you will, right? So I would say invite them to the table, have those conversations. See how we can mind meld. How can we collaborate to work together to achieve this? This is the goal. How are we going to put what your generation is bringing to the table, what our generation brings to the table? How can we put all of these amazing different qualities together to achieve this goal, which we know what our goal is at the end of the day? I think millennials, I think Gen Z are excellent to have in certain rooms because they're very close to the generation. What are they? Gen Alpha? What's the next one? That's
I'm not sure. I'm always a generation behind, which
me too, same. I'm getting to that point where I don't know who's who, but the children in schools now respond differently depending on generation. Right. And if we're going to keep up with how these generations are changing, we've got to invite them to the table. We've got to have these conversations. We've got to talk about responsibility, accountability, right? Because it's not to say, oh, generations before, all they did was work, work, work. No, we learned some really good things, even though we were working all of the time. There's still some very strong character traits and morals and values that can be infused with what you all are trying to do now. So I think a collaboration, a mind meld, inviting these beautiful, bright minds to the table is how we can move forward for sure.
Thank you. Yeah. And honestly, Caitlin, that like echoes what we do at Education Elements. Like we do a lot of strategic planning work with
Yeah.
districts. And one of the first things we do is engage the community, engage teachers, administrators, families, students, because you can't make something for someone without including them in that. Right? It doesn't make sense really to do that. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week. And we'll talk soon. Caitlin, thank you for joining us. And
Absolutely.
see you guys next time.